pleasure to invite all of, to welcome all of you to this particular afternoon, where we are going to talk about something that is possibly not very common. Leadership deep dives don't necessarily happen around topics such as these, partly because people like me who study leadership don't know Industry 4.0, and people who know Industry 4.0 don't necessarily talk about leadership, and therefore, you know, the whole context of putting the two together is challenging, and therefore, you know, just to quickly talk about what we are talking about, I think it may be useful for, at least for me, to summarize for myself and maybe for the group here, what is it that we are talking about in terms of Industry 4.0 and why this topic. And then I will invite our panelists who have not only kindly agreed to be here, but spent the time talking and thinking about the topic. You know, we've had some discussions around it to see if we can actually co-create value for all of us here. So happy to be listening to your questions. What should I do? Should I introduce the speakers first? Maybe I should, right? Because they're here. Yes. Okay. So maybe I will start off by introducing the panel, who has been carefully curated by you know, Mr. Piyush. He's done the hard work over the last 2 months trying to figure out who should be a good speaker for this. And in that search and his reaching out to several people, I think we have landed with a very good panel. So I will start off by introducing to you Mr. Ankur Chaturvedi, who currently is the Associate Vice President, IIMA Limited, and is an alumnus of the NDA, and his current role at IIMA leads sustainability. He leads sustainability, safety, excellence and quality. Now, I think there is a whole lot of things that are written about him, but in our initial conversation that we had, he spoke about the fact that he had something that is possibly called one of the black swan events in one's life. You know, you focus on something, you think that is all you want to do, and then when you are there, something unexpected happens and you are simply chucked out of it. And that's exactly what happened in his life. I won't get into the details. And since then, right, so having worked for his dream, being so close to his goal, he was chucked out for no reason of his own. And since then, he has made much more than, you know, what many of us have achieved by having achieved our dreams. So he not only compensated for that event, but he has learned, grown and did multiple things over the years, and I think it's only, you know, at least I felt very inspired to learn from you, and so look forward to the conversation. He also told me that he has, in the last so many years, attended so many programs at IIMA, and I'm sure we all have benefited from his presence in multiple ways. Krishna Raghavan, he has been the Chief People Officer at Flipkart. I'm sure there is nobody in this room who doesn't know about Flipkart, yeah, just like nobody in the room who doesn't know about IIMA, right? You know, the Borosil, some of these things that you will possibly use from childhood, you know, is what Ankur's company manufactures. So Krishna is was the Chief People Officer at Flipkart, and he took over his role at a crucial juncture for Flipkart, when it was still in its very formative years, to shape the organization's people charter for the long term. He laid out Flipkart's commitment to being inclusive, entrepreneurial, sustainable, while focusing on employee experience. And any one of us who has possibly seen many of the organizations like Flipkart grow, I think managing people, culture and the context of such organizations is really challenging, and if you do it well, you've done a lot in your career in that sense. So he has done other roles at Flipkart, and aside from his strong technical initiatives for technical expertise, he is also known to be a people's leader, and therefore he is really right person to talk to us about reimagining leadership in the industry 4.0, because while manufacturing has its own challenges of manufacturing 4.0, of IR 4.0, which is that they have to adopt it, companies like Flipkart are born with it, right. So there is a certain different space at which you look at. And in our conversation just before coming in here, he was also sharing that he's an avid runner. Yeah, and I don't know what all you do, but that's another interesting tidbit for us to know, because again, long distance running requires a certain amount of resilience and staying with the task. Senthil, sorry we could not meet and speak to each other, and therefore my introduction of you is going to be very bookish. Senthil is a business head and P&L owner with 30 years of experience in industrial automation, power systems and various processing industries. So he is right in the middle of what we are talking about in the context of manufacturing. He works at Schneider Electric and he is the Vice President of Industrial Automation at Schneider Electric. He has had a track record of setting up, tuning around, stabilizing, scaling up businesses, and also doing a whole lot of stakeholder management. And therefore, again, in the context of the deep change that we face in terms of Industry 4.0, I think it just makes imminent sense for us to have somebody like you, Senthil, to talk about how you've managed it, how you conceptualize it, and how you see things that we possibly need to think about. So with that, I will, I welcome you again, each one of you, and thank you for taking the time. Let me just get into the talk, because we have built too much of context. So let's not do much more of it, except the fact that I think I spoke to a lot of people about what is really Industry 4.0, and I'm not going to go into the history of industrialization, but I think the one of the heads of a telecom business explained this to me well. He said it is when both the physical, the human and the cyber will all get connected to each other. So how do things, parts in machines talk to each other? How do humans talk to each other? How humans talk to the machines, and how and in this interoperability of different systems connecting with it is really the fun of IR 4.0, which means that smart machines get smarter by the day. They access more data, they become hopefully more efficient and productive and less wasteful. Yeah, there is a digital connection between the various things, and while in the beginning it was only in the realm of manufacturing, I think it is no longer so distinct. It is both in services and in manufacturing. And the fact is that it is, with the fact that consumers are expected to participate in shaping their own products and services, thanks to smart devices, digital platforms, additive manufacturing, all of that really means that it's not just about what happens in the factory. It's affecting each one of us, and irrespective of whether we like it or not, these are interesting concepts for us to think about. And therefore, I think what I'm just going to stop with saying is that it is something that is pervasive, uses multiple technologies, and has led to a lot of different aspects of development and growth. However, I think when we read about many of these things, especially in the domain of future of work, the general concern is it is going to lead to loss of jobs. And it is going to, of course, create new jobs, but it's also going to lead to a loss of jobs. And therefore, there is a certain fear, there is a certain, can I not engage with it? Or, like the ostrich, if I keep my head down, maybe the world doesn't exist, kind of phenomena that happens. However, it is here for us to stay. We are already starting, we are already using it, and already all things are happening. So then the question is not to say jobs and so on and so forth. What are some of the leadership concerns there, right? What are the leaders talking about? What are they worrying about? What are some of the things that they are really thinking about in the context of the changes that are in front of us? And therefore, the question of, therefore this conversation is very exciting. Maybe I will start out by inviting each of you to first say what you understand by IR 4.0 in your context, and then we get into the next conversation. Yeah, you want to start, Krishna? Yeah.
First of all, pleasure being here and pleasure being with you all. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this conversation. I think you said it so eloquently already, ma'am. I think, first of all, I think of Industry 4.0 in the context of obviously been part of data first companies, tech first companies like Flipkart and previous companies that I've been part of. I think pervasive digitization across verticals, domains is how I would describe it. I think whether you take supply chain, customer experience, retail, I think there's digitization happening at rapid speed. And if I look back, the late 90s saw the advent of internet becoming more accessible. Otherwise, it was confined to labs, big institutions. And that provided the backbone. And once the internet became actually more democratized, data started to proliferate. And when there's so much of data, then the next stage came to be about how do you actually make sense of this data. So from a data awareness perspective, we started moving to intelligence. And once you get to decision sciences, which is basically how do you make sense of the data and how do you drive decision making within organizations, then the flourish of applications came to be, right? I'll give you an example. I think augmented reality, virtual reality, robotics, all of those are actually applications of how we are able to drive intelligence through data at the end of the day. Because the cost of data ownership also over the years has gone down. If you look at just the storage of data, it was unthinkable, at least, I mean, we were talking in kilobytes, at least the time I did my computer science degree, right? To the time now we are talking literally in petabytes. So the cost of ownership of data also went down, so which essentially made this backbone possible of internet, data coming through, and all the applications that actually started driving through this. So now it's pervasive across the board, and I'll just give you two examples within the Flipkart context. When we started actually launching furniture, the big problem, consumer problem for us was how do consumers buy furniture, place it in their room, how do they make sense of the dimensions, how is it going to look in that space? Then that gave birth to Flipkart Camera as an application, and that couldn't have happened without the digitization across all verticals. And a lot of functions had to come to play with that, because the catalog that you're ingesting into the Flipkart catalog has to be compatible with you actually generating, augmented reality images out of it, right? So I think that was one example. And the second big example is when the pandemic hit, all of us suddenly had to move all of our CX operations agents, which were sitting out of our offices. They couldn't come to office anymore because of the pandemic. So suddenly you had to operate a remote CX operation. And with that came all the challenges of privacy of data, security, how do you actually build these Chinese walls between customer data, so forth. So I think now it's so pervasive across the board. Every application, every vertical, you have to embrace Industry 4.0, and it's powering a lot of things that you see, not just in Flipkart, but across industries. That's my take on Industry 4.0.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, thank you very much for all the good words that you have said, but that is all marketing. That's how I am attired. well, we met for lunch, I was not dressed like this. This is to impress, and that is what ma'am said. She read it out from various things that are written here and there. The fact remains that I didn't study beyond class 12, and that's where my formal education ended, and I've seen more failure than success. So when I look at Industry 4.0 also, I look at it with the same mindset. Now, when we talk about industry, we talk about the industrial revolution, we talk about automation, we talk about digitization, then we talk about Industry 4.0. Now, it looks as if there is one step, then the next step, the third step, and now we are the fourth. Industry 4.0 is the last step. Well, in real life, it doesn't work like that. When I started my career, ERPs were being implemented. You still had bin cards, you still had stock registers, and ERP came in. So with ERP, the wow factor was the supply chain integration, which Walmart and Levi's did, where someone bought a jeans in Walmart store, the order would be placed for the yarn, integrated. Then gradually things keep changing. So it's not that today we decide that from today we are 3, tomorrow we will become 4. It doesn't happen like that. There are minor gradual things that happen. And for anything to happen, the biggest requirement for any change to happen is a leader. A change has to be led. Or of course, there are changes which happen by accident. But then accidental changes are not controlled. They don't give you the desired outcome. They give you an outcome which might be desired. But if you need a desired outcome, you need a leader who can visualize. And now in Industry 4.0, the biggest challenge for a leader is to visualize what is possible, because the impossible is possible. And that is the challenge for a leader. And again, it happens step by step. I gave you the example of integrated supply chains. Now look at predictive maintenance. Predictive maintenance said that you repair a thing before it breaks down. And what it did was, like all of us, we have our cars and two-wheelers. There is a time-based maintenance chart. So at this time you change this. Now with Industry 4.0, with the technology now, why do you change a part when you know it is going to last longer? Just because it's X years old or X kilometers it has run. Similarly in the plants. So gradually these shifts are happening. So first it was digitization, and the challenge to Industry 4.0 is to digitize everything that is done. So for the true Industry 4.0 factory to happen, everything needs to be digitized. Every machine needs to talk to the other machine. And that will not happen in one day. That is not a button to be pressed. We are in that journey, and again, even I don't know when we can say that my factory or this is Industry 4.0. So that's my take on Industry 4.0.
Correct, correct. So very nicely put that it's a process, it's not a outcome. So that's very interesting. Senthil?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. I think those were very good insights. I would articulate Industry 4.0 as an integrative system of value creation. I think Ankur mentioned very well there are multiple stages. All the 3 revolutions before 4.0. We had mechanization and assembly line in the second. The third was automation, and then we wanted to step up with the digitization. But it's a much more about how do we integrate to create value. So Industry 4.0 primarily, that's how we need to look at. And what are the benefits? The primary benefit of integrating systems is to get insightful decisions. How do we get with so much of machines and so much technology available, right? So we have kind of explosion of technology, and we applied it all in the industry or any sector. How do we integrate to create value? and then drive insightful decisions. And what is the benefit of insightful decision? Of course, increasing profitability. So when we probably position asset, you rightly said about the concern on when automation leads to job loss and other things, but it's much more. When you make it more profitable, it's much more investment back into the system. So increasing efficiency is the primary focus, but there we get the profitability. But how do we do it? When it comes to, let me take a manufacturing one. It's about primarily integrating and driving an enterprise level visualization. The moment you connect everything and get an enterprise level visualization from shop floor to top floor, and that's how I put it, and then becomes easy for you to drive a better performance of your asset. So primary role is on the asset performance. The moment you manage your assets better with a good visualization enterprise-wide, your product quality or your on-time delivery, every other parameter which is depending on that asset gets better. You get an ability, you get a capability, you get a handle to improve every other KPI. The moment you have a capability to improve the asset performance of any asset in an industry. So that's how I put it, an integrative system providing enterprise-wide visualization, which would primarily drive the performance of assets much better.
Right. Again, thank you very much. I think it's a very interesting thought to, just to imagine that you can actually visualize everything from the top floor to the shop floor using, the data and the capabilities that we have, because that visualization is what possibly helps us make better decisions. However, our brains are quite limited, but with the help of tools and techniques, maybe that's what just gets expanded in that entire process. So that's very interesting. So with that, I think my next question, and maybe we will do it in the reverse order this time so that we don't have a order effect here. So ask you, Senthil, first about this, that if that is how we understand IR 4.0 as something that helps us in decision making, something that helps us in understand that it is a process and understand that it helps us in better visualization and creating of intelligence and collecting of data, then what are some of the leadership challenges in this? So how are leaders responding to it? What are some of their concerns at this point of time?
Okay, I would put it in two ways. One is about conceptualizing the big picture. It's about it's an evolving technology, and none of this component stops. Every element of technology, whether it is IoT or cyber security or augmented reality or the big data, name it, okay, or cloud computing, all the 9 pillars. We have more than 9 or close to 9 pillars in this 4.0. Every pillar, it's an evolving technology. So the biggest leadership challenge is to kind of cohesively conceptualize how do we go about this. You need to conceptualize the big picture, taking into account it's an evolving technology. Okay, so first arriving at the big picture, ensuring we have all the stakeholders available and drawing up that strategic roadmap around the 9 pillars. Okay, so that itself is a phenomenal task, primarily because the understanding is evolving. By the time the understanding evolves, the technology is far away. So where do we stay? What do we want? We need to be clear at that. But with so much of consultation, so much of knowledge, organizations get there. But then the next dimension of challenges is about how do you execute. Execution is absolutely not possible at one stage. As I said, it's a shop floor to top floor. Execution happens in island across organizations. It could be one location or multiple locations. Multinationals have this challenge. You need to take into account multiple manufacturing facilities within the countries, or often it could be beyond the shores. So execution happens in island. If you want to visualize, maybe we pick up one factory in one geography like India, and then also it has an effect on another factory which could be in Indonesia or Philippines. So you need to find a way by which we cannot sequentially develop. We might develop it parallelly, right? So the execution is going to be island, but while you are executing in that fashion, it's important that every facility or every location is kind of glued or tied up, or ensuring that that big picture is understood, and they drive that consistency, the conceptual consistency. So that's these two-dimensional challenges, arriving at the big picture in an evolving technology. All the 9 pillars are evolving, and second, once you arrive at how do you execute it? How do you execute? When you execute it in islands, how do you integrate to get the benefits which you intended for? So I would put that as the two dimensions of leadership challenge.
Very interesting again, you know, and I think only somebody who's working in the area would be able to get to these. So thank you for sharing. Ankur?
I'm intellectually challenged.
Don't say that.
So you asked about challenges. Now, operations, we call challenges bottlenecks, right? I'm sure you will agree. So where is normally the bottleneck? On this bottle, where is the neck? So the same thing. The biggest challenge or the biggest impediment to driving Industry 4.0 is the top management. Ma'am, you've been part of boards. You'll realize that ultimately, for any investment, you need to have an ROI. Now, how do you give an ROI when a record is maintained in a register and that register will get digitized? How do you get that ROI? You cannot put that ROI in numbers. It will definitely come, but you can't put it in a ROI of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. The benefits are there, and the benefits definitely have intrinsic value. They have real value, and they'll impact on all your PQC DSMs, but it is impossible to put it on paper. So that's the biggest challenge, to convince the top management to put their money behind. Now, taking a step back, when it comes to leadership, leadership cannot be positional, and especially for things like Industry 4.0. It cannot be hierarchical. It cannot be that I am the boss, I am the leader, I will drive Industry 4.0. Not possible. The leadership of Industry 4.0 has to come from young minds. And as people in positions of hierarchical leadership, it is our duty to ensure that we provide that platform for them to lead. And that is a very big challenge, because one, traditionally our culture is, मतलब मेरे बाप से पूछ के वाला डायलॉग, तो वो बाप है तो he is always better. So if you are a boss, if you have reached a certain level, you are the boss. The younger people or the junior people will not know. And even at times the junior people also feel, how can I go and tell my boss? So that is another challenge. The third challenge which leaders face is the adoption by the people on the ground. Lot of people get married to their jobs. They get married to the records that they maintain, the day in day out jobs that they do, because ultimately it is their job which is driving the revenue for the company, and it is important, and they have been rewarded for doing that well, and they have been doing it over a period of time, and they see so much power in doing it correctly. And normally senior people or people who have spent some time in that position are people who would have seen multiple people come and do that job, not do that properly, and the successful people being retained. So when you talk to them and when you tell them that from tomorrow or going forward, your job will be done by the system, or this is getting automated, the immediate concern is that, one, of course, the job security, more importantly, job might still stay. They feel a sense of loss of power and relevance. Now, as leaders, it is very important for us to reassure the team that this is an organizational need and you are a good performer, you have performed well with X, Y, you will definitely do well with Z as well. And that assurance, that connection needs to be built. And like I said earlier, for any transformation to happen, the outcome depends on the intent and ability of the leader. So that needs to be clear and communicated to the last member of the team.
Thank you.
And just to add and give you an example, I'm sure you guys must have seen Sam Bahadur. The reason, and he very famously said, and a lot of people have criticized this, he was asked that if you had chosen to, because he was part of the undivided Indian army, so he had a choice to be in Pakistani or Indian army. So he was asked, what would have happened if you were part of the Pakistan army? He said Pakistan would have won. Now that is the power of intent. His intent was clear. And that is what is required even in the industry. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Okay. And I think you brought in some very interesting points about, how leaders have to start to think about themselves and who is a leader. That's an important question that you're asking. Krishna?
Yeah. So great points by both of them. So just building on, I think 3 aspects I'll talk about, which are challenges, which are contextual again to things that I have seen. First and foremost, I think all the 9 pillars that Senthil talked about, each of them individually, just looking at them as pieces of technology is the biggest pitfall that most organizations get into, which is like, I need to digitize my supply chain, I need to digitize my people experience. That doesn't work at all, because without quantifying what strategic outcomes you want to drive for the organization. For instance, I want to drive a low-cost supply chain for grocery in India because that's what my margin structure indicates for me. That's an outcome, that's a strategic outcome. I need to drive a certain cost per shipment. My entire strategy around Industry 4.0 as an example has to actually connect to that outcome. In isolation, doing Industry 4.0 is not going to get you anything in any vertical for that matter. So I think that's the big challenge that leaders grapple with, which is defining those strategic outcomes in the first place. Second is the aspect around the ecosystem around these technologies. Senthil talked about them fast moving, developing, evolving, but there's not one player out there that solves all these problems together at once in the same depth. So what you realize as a leadership, you have a fragmented ecosystem. You have one technology for cloud computing, another one
Absolutely.
for something else, AR, VR and so forth. So essentially what you land up doing as an organization is, if you're not thoughtful about where you want to invest, what kinds of technology, in which areas are you going to continue, in fact, mechanization for that matter in that immediate time frame, because you believe fragmentation is going to be much more higher cost of ownership, you need to take that. So these are very smart and deliberate choices that you need to make as a leadership. I'll just give you an example again. Like in Flipkart, we had so much of data. We looked at all the cloud hosting providers in the world, Google, Microsoft included. The total cost of ownership was much more than building our own data center. And we landed up building our own data center in Chennai. Right? So that's a very conscious choice that we had to make. So that's the second big problem. The third one also, I think Ankur talked about briefly, is the fear of letting go. When machines take over, you actually can make decisions. And one example I like to quote is, the way we price products in Flipkart is all manual to begin with when we started. So a category manager sits there, figures out what's the right price of this product. When we brought all of data intelligence, data science into this, we could automate pricing. But the kind of resistance we faced from the category managers, not because they were afraid of the fact that they were going to lose their jobs, but they felt right out of the back that they will be better at doing it than a machine doing it. And so how do you drive that adoption? How do you explain the efficiency gains, therefore the profitability potentially as an outcome, and thereby they moving to higher value added jobs is a big challenge in front of leadership in terms of adoption of these technologies. Those are the 3 that I like to talk about.
So just to build on it, do you have some good examples of how you managed that? Like even this category managers, do you have some good examples of how you managed as a people officer?
Yeah. So in this, just taking this example itself, I think Senthil spoke about it from a factory parlance. The big part of it was aligning leadership on this common vision. Like, why are we doing this? What is this going to give us from a purpose? Because particularly today's workforce is not going to take a mandate top down. At least in most knowledge companies, that's not the case. They are not hierarchy based companies. So making sure they understand the purpose is number one. Number two is showing efficacy, showing a win, which means we took a particular category as a pilot and we automated pricing for it, right? And then we said, what are those category managers in that particular category going to do as a result of this? You know, how are we going to reskill them, upskill them to do different types of jobs, thereby continuing in their role, but maybe doing very different things than they did previously. So making sure that we're able to pilot this and then go back and communicate. I cannot stress enough over communication. Like there's not enough communication, it's period. Like you just need to keep going back and talking about outcomes, and that drives great amount of belief. Because no amount of literature on saying in theoretical stuff is going to help. It's actually it matters when you actually implement. So those are the 2-3 things we did, and we've seen more adoption. We are not there yet, by the way.
Okay.
Still, there are parts of the organization which are resistant to this change, so we have to keep at it.
Keep at it.
Yeah.
Ankur, any examples or any thoughts that you would like to share?
Yeah, a very common thing which I'm sure if you visualize a factory, the efficiency of the factory is driven by the supervisor. So most of the data in terms of efficiency, production, quality, quantity is recorded in a logbook. Now even after we had automation of machines, the actual production data was still being recorded manually. So as part of Industry 4.0, we digitized the entire line so that in real time we got production data, and now it's been some time since it was done. But what that did was it made this record of the operator redundant. Now the moment this was made redundant, the operator, like Raghavan mentioned, that they feel they've been doing it for a long time. How can it be done automated? How can a machine do something which I do? So they would challenge the data which was there. So part of it was a bit of maybe insecurity, and part of it was also overconfidence.
Correct.
And especially the passionate people. They were convinced that what this system is projecting is wrong, what I was writing in my register was right, because there is a difference between what the digitized output is giving and what this is giving. And this created a major problem. Another challenge was that when you have multiple factories, or even in the same factory multiple lines, multiple locations, over a period of time, it's like a car. You'll see people, you keep sitting in your car seat takes the shape of your body. So the same happens with anything that we do. So these machines get molded by the people who are running them. The processes also, though they are standardized, they still end up becoming non-standardized. And especially when you're talking about different products being made, though like a pancharist being packed or a Boroplus being packed, one is packed in a bottle, other is packed in a tube, but ultimately the process is the same. There is a product excuse me, which goes into a container and then it is finally packed. But because the nature of the product is different, people working are different, they come from different backgrounds, the processes become non-standardized. So the challenge is, and the moment you tell them to standardize, whoever you ask to change, he has 1001 reasons to explain why what he is doing is right. And in all fairness, what he is doing is not wrong. You have to pick between two right things. So you can only pick one. And that is a challenge that we faced, especially when we looked at 11 factories across 4 countries. When you want, and then things like what is important in a particular location may not be, the other person might not find it relevant. So this was the second challenge. And the third challenge that we faced was the skill requirement for enabling or getting the full benefit out of Industry 4.0 is very different from an automated production line. So again, we are talking about a transformational change. It's not a step change. It's not a evolutionary change which is gradually happening. It is a step change. So getting mature people who've been doing something very successfully over the past 10, 15 years and telling them that they need to reskill. And ultimately we are human, and especially the shop floor workers, for them to communicate that you are being reskilled not because you are bad at your job. Normally you send a guy for reskilling or extra training is because there is a gap, skill gap identification, as what ma'am would agree. Traditional things that we have been doing in our factory. So if there is a skill gap, you send him for training. Here you are sending him for training where there is no skill gap, but the stigma of being sent for training because you have a skill gap is huge. So you need to have that clear. And again, coming back to what Krishna said, the solution was and will remain talking and talking and talking. You need to communicate, and there is no over communication. The more you can talk, the more the top floor talks to the shop floor, the better is the organization. That's all from my side. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Senthil, do you have any examples to
Yeah.
share? Yeah.
I'll pick up an example with a customer where I think, and I'll build upon what Krishna mentioned. He beautifully brought some points. It's about the strategic objective. So with this one customer, actually we co-created the strategic objective and value proportion, and that was traceability from raw materials to finished good. And that's where so much of rejections, quality challenge, all that stuff. So whether across from raw material to finished good, and even after if it leaves, wherever it is in the world with the customer, and if you're having a challenge with the product, they want to be in a position to trace back. So the strategic objective was traceability. Again, like what Krishna mentioned, the biggest challenge was that there are the ecosystem, right? So on one hand, you drive multiple internal stakeholders, you arrive at the big picture and develop. But when you have the kind of ecosystem, the technologies are diverse, and customer get to hear so many things for the same technology. For some, multiple people, multiple vendors can provide it, multiple technology providers can provide it. So to drive clarity and to ensure how do we achieve that, you start with the pain point. So once you arrive at the strategic objective, so what is that preventing us from getting this done? Start with the pain points. And the moment you start with the pain points, right from across the flow, and then there you are in a position to understand what is preventing us from getting the strategic objective of traceability. Often, what we do is that we start the other way. We have a technology and let's go and apply. So if you do the reverse, understand the pain points, arrive at the strategic objective, understand the pain points, and understand why is that we are having a challenge with existing system, and then what is that we need to do. So we built upon this actually. So understand the pain points and co-create the value. Co-create the value proportion for us. So that is how we were in a position to arrive at a solution. Despite there were multiple people in the ecosystem, we were in a position to do that. So summarizing, I would say it's about once the strategic objective is arrived at, and we need to approach with the openness, starting with the pain points, and then build it step by step. And that's how you kind of co-create the value.
Okay, thank you. You want to say something?
Yeah.
Ed, please.
I just wanted to add one behavioral thing that we've seen as well, which is often when you digitize a particular area of the business with a strategic outcome, it's important to establish a shared success view for both stakeholders. The operations folk who were doing it manually earlier and now digitization coming into play, right? If you establish that, there's a greater empathy that starts building between the two stakeholders. And they don't see each other as encroaching upon one's territory, right? So this is again human behavior, the ability to actually create that shared success. And for instance, in our case, getting the engineers to go to the various warehouses across the country and appreciate how things are being done operationally and how they're going to actually now digitize it. And several use cases emerge from operations because engineers might be far removed from day-to-day things that might be happening on the floor. So how do you actually drive that? It actually drives greater empathy for one another, and it also brings a much richer shared purpose between the two stakeholders. Just wanted to add that experience.
That's a very good example of, don't try to solve the problem sitting in your office. Try to understand, where it is really happening. Right. So that's very important. I think we have, we have spoken a fair bit on what it is and what's the leadership challenges and some of examples of what it takes to possibly change. Maybe it is time for us to open it a little bit to the audience to ask questions, and then we can come back and do a little bit more of the putting together. So time for you all to ask questions. Yes, you're already ready. Yes.
My name is Siddharth. I'm a PGPX student. You spoke about that Flipkart approached Google and Microsoft, and then you realized that the cost of actually putting your data on the cloud of Google or Microsoft was much higher, and you decided to go ahead with your own center, private data center. I just wanted to know that the solutions consultants from these companies whom your companies are talking to, are they taking the HR aspect as well into the picture while providing your solution, or it's only technical, and what is your opinion on it? Are the companies able to provide a combined solution, or it's only technical from their side as of now?
Good question.
Yeah. Obviously don't want to speak about the companies themselves in any other light, but what I would say is that for us it became a TCO kind of a conversation, a total cost of ownership conversation based on the data footprint that we had. Largely, many of these solutions are not very bespoke. They're not very customizable, right? So they have a standard solution, and there's obviously a commercial reason that they're in the business, so they're maximizing for that. But when we try to optimize our own private cloud, there were certain optimizations that we could customize bespoke for our footprint. That became the winning factor for us, right? So to answer to your question is, it's more technical in nature. It's not a very holistic solution which will tie into everything that we do.
Correct.
So as of now, the HR aspect is missing from the technical solution that the companies are trying to provide.
When you say HR aspect, can you elaborate?
Like you said, there are multiple challenges, like people are not ready to accept the technology. Right on ground, like Ankur sir provided the example of ERP, that when ERP came, people were not ready to actually take it on board. So there are people challenges also. Yeah. So people challenges, are they being addressed by these companies, or it is only technical? No,
it's more technical in nature. It's for you to address the people challenges when you adopt this technology.
Thank you.
And that is why a lot of them fail, because that's not paid attention.
Well, ma'am, if I may, I'll just add one thing to what you are saying, the point that you made. Remember one thing. Your people challenges will never be solved by anyone else. Get the best HR consultants for your IR issues, they still need to be solved by you. So if you ever think that your people challenges, अपने घर का कलेश खुद ही मिटाना पड़ेगा भाई, पड़ोसी कभी नहीं मिटाएगा. Be very clear on this. So it's not just for Industry 4.0, for anything.
Correct.
Hello sir.
Sorry for interjecting.
No, that's a good point. Yes.
Good evening sir. I am also from PGPX student. I am Falguni. I have question from you both. Like you mentioned, as a category manager, he may face the challenges, like he would be insecure about like digitalization may affect him, like he may lose his job or the role. Similarly, for the shop floor worker, like when the logs are being digitalized, so he may feel like now his role is being taken over and eaten by this new digital thing. So how you tackle with such problem where people feel insecure about their job roles going forward?
You want to take that first?
Please, after you.
Okay.
All right. So I'll probably answer this in very concrete example, staying on that same example. So what we found is there are two sides to category in any retail or any operation. There's a buy, there's a sell. So when you're selling, obviously pricing is one factor that you're determining, one parameter. But it's amongst many other parameters. For instance, how do you decide what assortment that you need to present to the customer, right? Pricing is just one aspect to it. How do you actually present this from a cataloging experience perspective? There are many facets to this particular role that we have in the company. pricing was manual and it was dominating most of the content of the role. In fact, there were employee complaints about the fact that you hire from very top tier institutions and you get them to do manual pricing and they're uploading Excel spreadsheets. So there was actually a latent employee need as well to address this problem. So if you tap into the right need and you're able to raise the level of quality of the role per se, and there are many facets to this role, we were able to bring that out a lot more well for the employee as a result of that. So there's an employee NPS metric as an example, right? Just tracking that post digitization will help you. Did you actually make a change on the ground or not?
Interesting.
So from the manufacturing industry, the problem is just the reverse, because here there was a higher skilled person doing a lower skilled job. Here it was the reverse, and at times he was challenging the output of the machine, of the computer. Now the way we handled it, and I am very proud that the way we handled it is through empathy. And when it comes to people, the only way to address issues where people are insecure is through empathy. So there were two scenarios. One, he would find out some error, because whatever technology we use, there are bound to be some errors, and because of their experience and their grip on what they have been doing, he would be able to pick out that error and then come and highlight that error. इतना पैसा बर्बाद किया, ये लगा दिया, देखो एकदम बेकार है. Now one way to tell it, तुम बेवकूफ हो, ऐसा नहीं होता है. The computer cannot, you cannot think more than the computer. The other is, take him along, listen to him, give him that importance, thank him, and in this specific case, take him on board and make him debug everything that is there across all plants. कि भाई तूने एक पकड़ा ना, चला जा, सारे पकड़. So he feels empowered. He feels that he is being acknowledged rather than being acknowledged. And similarly, this is one case. The other is when a person starts getting insecure that I don't know what to do. Think of something for him to do. There is no dearth of work in any factory. Make sure no one is idle. So that's how we addressed it.
Senthil, do you have an answer to that? Or I know you might be feeling a bit left out, but
no, absolutely not. I think Ankur and Krishna has been bringing in excellent examples, particularly around empathy, and that's exactly, most exactly required. And I would put it and building upon that, we need to help them deal with the disruption. So what's happening is the disruption. So when we, and that's a new skill. So and if you help leaders deal with the disruption, first we need to primarily understand how do we deal with the disruption, and at every level we need to help them deal with that disruption which is brought by this technology, rather than trying to find fault. I think Ankur gave an excellent example. Rather than trying to say that a machine cannot be wrong, take him along, wonderful. Why don't you see that if there are other flaws like this, and how do we get them in? So what do we do by that? We are helping him to deal with that, or probably we are making him inclusive into the changes and the disruptions what we are having. So the best way is that get everybody to deal with the disruption, acknowledge it, and then again Ankur mentioned beautifully, there is no dearth of challenges. It's about reskilling. You don't lose jobs. And as I mentioned, the whole purpose of this is to make insightful decisions and help our assets perform better. When it performs better, we are more profitable. When we are more profitable, we are going to reinvest. When I reinvest, the jobs are going to be there. So when you help this economics and benefit of better quality, better asset performance, and the profitability, link it back, the organization ability to reinvest. And when I'm profitable, I reinvest. When I reinvest, there are more jobs. Very the last. So once and that's another way of helping them deal with the disruption. So this disruption is a virtuous cycle, creates a virtuous cycle, whereas the imagination is that they think it's a vicious cycle taking them out of the system. It's a virtuous cycle, not just taking them out of the cycle, but bringing in more jobs. So the moment we help them to understand this, I think we would have much more buy-in from all across.
Thank you. You have a question? Yes.
Good evening. Welcome, Krishna. Welcome, Ankur, and welcome, Stantil from online. And thank you, Professor Vora. My name is Dr. Somnath Mitra. I work with Adani Enterprises, and we have large infrastructure across the globe. Now, we have deployed many Industry 4.0 applications and machines and things like that. So how we handle in our present organization is, we communicate the sense of purpose. Why are we implementing Industry 4.0? Sense of purpose from the leadership to achieve net zero. That's the larger vision. Then we, drill down, saying that net zero is a very global motherhood statement. Then what's specific? Environment, energy saving, water saving, the land quality, because that's very important for infrastructure projects. So the question that I have for Ankur is, is there any specific reskilling program that you run in your organization? Because we run many reskilling programs so that people are really up to speed vis-a-vis the emerging technologies and the way we are adopting emerging technologies and machines. So the question that I have for Ankur is there any skill development program, skill upgrade program that you have in your organization? Thank you.
Well, thank you. We have a structured L&D program as part of our TPM on the shop floor for the blue collar people, and as part of our structured appraisal and talent development for the white collar. So there is no specific focus on Industry 4.0 reskilling. It's a comprehensive program where Industry 4.0 is one of the things, and again I've been repeating it again and again. Industry 4.0 is something to be discussed in places like this. For a factory, it doesn't matter. It is a specific project with a specific outcome. It might be part of Industry 4.0. It is as good as making a foundation for a building, or you're putting a machine. It could be anything. So Industry 4.0 is something which is a term which covers a lot of things. So we don't have anything Industry 4.0 specific, but yes, learning and development is a continuous process which is integrated in our organization.
Great, thank you. Any other? Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, my name is Chetnesh. I'm a founder of a small edtech company with 30 people. And what I found is when we try to reskill or transform our company, definitely like Ankur sir has said, they have thousands of reasons to say, no sir, we are very good at what we are doing. It's okay, we don't need this technology to be approved. And then my question is, how do we motivate them, okay, to still work on it? Because we know that it is implemented and we have tested out with other companies as well, and it goes very well. So it's about motivation, not about just do your work, you have to do it. How do we do that?
May I? Sorry.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
is it addressed to somebody or you want?
Any one of them.
No, you are.
I can.
Sorry. Senthil, you can take it.
Okay, sure. So when you, that's a fantastic question. So how do you motivate? Often when we begin exercise like this and the end in mind is not clear. So when we probably drive the end in mind, what we have, what is in the end, what do we achieve as an organization, and what is in it for him. So once that becomes clear, and we would be engaging them. Once we start getting into this direction, we will be engaging them. So it's about end in mind. The end in mind will clarify him what is certain for him. He would imagine the end in mind is that probably, as Ankur rightly said, loss of power or loss of job. Once it's clear that none of their apprehension or none of their insecurity is what we want to achieve, and probably they would step back, get out of the insecure zone and start thinking, how do I participate? So it's about clarifying the end in mind would be the first step towards making them understand. Once they understand And you said, and once we help them participate with that, and probably the motivation will.
Okay.
I would say a specific answer is a 3x3 approach. The first 3 is for you. Are you convinced that you want to do it? That is the first question that you only can answer. Why do you want to do it? Basically, what is the benefit? And what if I don't do it, what will happen? So, that is the first 3 of the first 3. The second approach is to communicate these 3 transparently and openly. The third point is very important, that if I don't do this, what is it that I lose? Will competition cannibalize me? Will I lose my edge? Will I lose the ability to attract additional customers? What is it that not doing this? This is something which is very understandable for a person, and as a leader you need to visualize, articulate and communicate. Then the third part is taking them on board, which is the third C, which I say convince. Just communicating would not help. Sending out an email, I am doing this because this, and if we don't do this, this will happen. People will read it and just ignore it. You need to convince them, and this is again a key role of any leader, to imagine, to visualize, create a goal and then sell that dream to the people. I'll again give you an example. In the 71 war, there was a Rajput regiment led by an Anglo-Indian British officer, Colonel Hyde. So he asked his troops, "Kal ka khana kahan hoga?" So the whole troops shouted Dograi. Dograi was the town in Pakistan which they were going to. So he asked in Haryanvi, अगर सीओ साहब को गोली लग गई तब क्या करोगे? कहता कंधे पे ठोके ले जाएंगे, खाना डोगराई में खाएंगे. So that intent needs to be communicated. The troops were not to think that your CO is dead. Now what do I do? So that people were clear, even if my CO dies, I will still go and achieve that target. So that focus is what you need to communicate to the last man on the ground, and then only the convincing part is important, and convincing can only happen if the first 2 are there. If you are clear in what you want, you have communicated it transparently. So even if you don't know, I don't know what is the benefit, but I still feel I want to do it. Why don't you come along? That's also a way to say it.
Yeah.
But not knowing what is the benefit and then using ChatGPT to come out with a benefit and trying to sell it will not work.
Yeah, I think you made a very interesting point that, if we are, as it is a leadership deep dive, one of the ways that we definitely understand leadership is in influencing the other to
Absolutely.
do what they may not be wanting to do, and that therefore becomes a very important learning. We have one last question and then we will actually start to wrap up because of time.
Okay, hi.
Yeah.
I'm Ruchi, and this is in regards to the very first question that you people answered, that how we can make people get into some other or better job within the same firm instead of feeling insecure that their job has been taken by some machine or something. So I think it is easier said than done, because recently we have been seeing huge layoffs in very big MNCs, including Google, Amazon and Flipkart as well. So if you can share some insights over the same.
Layoffs.
Yeah. So I think there are very different reasons for why a layoff can happen. It may not be connected to the reason that you are describing, that digitization actually caused layoffs. In many cases, companies across the board, there is an exuberance that happens in the market. The companies tend to overhire for a certain market outcome that doesn't land, and then they actually course correct or calibrate. So it may not be connected, at least in my opinion, to digitization as one of the challenges. Yeah. It's one amongst many things that could be actually causing a particular layoff in a particular institution, be it the institutions that you described. So yeah, that's how I would think about it.
Well, I have a very clear answer. Give me an example of a manufacturing industry which is laid off. None. So we are the good guys.
Oh, come on. We're not competing. I know there are 2 hands up. How is the group's mood? Can we take 2 questions and then we can? Yes?
The mic.
Yeah. So pass on the mic once you're done so that, yeah, thank you. And आप उनको mic दे दीजिए एक और.
My question is like more of next level, like industry 5.0 or further. What just a forecast or anything? Yeah, all of them perhaps. Please, insights from all of them.
I think we are grappling with industry 4.0 right now. Don't have the time to think about 5.0. I think when 4.0 gets properly implemented, as Senthil beautifully described it, maybe we'll be at the advent of 5.0. But yeah, I think it's easier said than done. All of the things that we talked about from a 4.0 perspective, the seamless interconnectedness of all those technologies driving market value for these companies, we are a long way off, according to me. And therefore, I really can't hazard a guess on 5.0 at this time. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. I think
maybe I can add to that, yes. What Krishna mentioned. So I would, rather than putting in the technology format, I would put it 5.0 as a combination of human ability and these technologies like AI and robotics. So we have already IoT very well. We have already 4.0. So you build over it with AI and robotics. It gives the ability for us to collaborate. It enhances the collaboration between humans and machines. So that's what 5.0 is about. How well we enhance the ability for us to collaborate between machines and humans. And beyond 4.0, what we have is this AI and robotics. Once we integrate it well, and then we achieve it. But as Krishna rightly said it's on the foundation of 4.0. So we need to get that. Organizations which is already at that or have started implementing, and I can give examples wherever you have robotics. In the manufacturing establishment, AI, you would not hear it openly, but there are efforts going in. But robotic is something very, very prominent, very, very visible. So in manufacturing, if you see robotics, and that's the first steps, and then when you bring in AI. But beyond manufacturing, you see AI already very well available. You may not see robotics. So when you bring it all together, AI, robotics, and IoT integrated very well, and it helps to enhance the collaboration between humans and machines, and that's what 5.0 is about.
Thank you.
I have a slightly counter view.
Yeah.
You need to have a child before naming him or her. So probably industry 4.0, if you had asked 10 years back that what is industry 4.0, no one would know. We've achieved something, some technology has appeared on the horizon, it's being adopted, and that's been labeled industry 4.0. Similarly, what will come and what will be called 5.0, probably what Central is saying would become 5.0, we never know, there can be something absolutely different, we don't know.
Yeah. Okay, one last question and then we will, sorry.
Yep. So, thank you for your time. I am Nimesh and I run one company for ERP consulting. So, my question is more around the changing expectations of the new workforce, right? So, whether it is, if we combine the digital aspect of it, how the overall environment or experience that we are providing, at least I face a lot of challenges attracting the right people, continuing them with the organization for so long. Are there any similar challenges that in your respective organizations you are facing? And if yes, are there any unique ways through which you are managing it, mainly working with these Gen Zs or the recent people who are joining the industry? Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, I would be lying if I said that no organization has a challenge of retaining talent, and that too high quality talent, right? So every organization does at every scale. I think the one thing, there are probably multiple things, but I'll focus just on one thing, and I go back to this really great piece of work that Dan Pink had done about the core of a human, right, which is autonomy, mastery and purpose. I think the big part of trying to retain talent is not by looking at it as a talent retention game, but how do you engage this talent for the long term in an organization. And the only way that at least I've seen it happen is when you provide this seamless movement across different skill sets that are provided to them, that they are not static in their learning. The mastery piece that we talk about, true mastery happens not just in doing the same job, and that's not the new gen workforce. Maybe my parents were that, maybe I was part of that, but now it's about moving across or migrating across, you know, adjacencies in skills. For instance, if I come in and join as an engineer, I want to become a data scientist at some point in time. Once I become a data scientist, I want to do something different. The organizations that allow you to discover your true purpose and allow you to migrate into those are the ones that are going to retain top quality talent, according to me.
And I think what you're saying is very important, that it's not about big or small organizations, across organizations. Right?
Ma'am, I can give a
Yes.
live example.
Yeah.
I worked for 28 years, 11 years in one company, 11 in another, and 3 more in the balance. In the first company, 9 transfers in 6 years. In 11 years, definitely more than 11 roles. In my current organization, this is my 5th role. And when I say role, it is not that you've done 3 years so you are promoted. It is a very different job, and even now I am into transition. Now I'm sorry, I'm giving my personal example.
No, why not?
But
why sorry?
if my organization is giving me an opportunity to do something that I like to do, why would I go somewhere else? Of course, money is one part. We are all professionals. We work for a salary. And when you look at the younger generation, yes, like he said, I'll be lying. We have attrition of 17%. It's huge. But, and it's a challenge we struggle with. But if we can provide them, and another point is getting the right people. You set the expectation right. When you go to a campus, you have a presentation which shows you as the next Google. And then when they come, they realize कि यार यहाँ तो स्टूल पे बैठ के काम करना है, तो obviously छोड़ के जाएगा. So that is another thing, getting the right expectation and getting the people, like selling the right dream.
Before I close the session, I'd like each one of you to say one thing that you learned today.
Well,
yeah.
One thing, my takeaway is a phrase, connecting the shop floor to the top floor. Thank you, Central. That's my takeaway from here.
Great. Thank you.
I learned a very technical definition of Industry 4.0 from Senthil, so I think.
Great, thank you. Senthil?
It's a reverse from both, I must say, and from this conversation. While technology is what about Industry 4.0, but it's much more how do we deal with the people element is going to define the success and results. So that's a big takeaway.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So I think we have come the full circle. We've looked at what it is, we've looked at who leaders are, we've looked at how we can all evolve and contribute to it, and of course we are anyway part of it. Yeah, we're part of this entire you know, as they say in Matrix, when you're part of it, you don't even see it. And that's where we are at this point of time, and we have to continuously try to see it and see what we do. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank each one of you for your very interesting thoughts and also the thoughtfulness with which you answered each of the questions, and also an extremely good audience. Yeah, you were very engaged, and therefore thank you very much for that. And so it's, you know, I know we always, before we set up any such conversation, we're always worried, will the room be full? Yeah, and that's, I think, while it's a very important question, I think it's most important to have a room full of more interested people, and that is what you were. Thank you very much. So thank you all of you. There were lots of people who've been working in the background for this. I'm not going to mention each one of you, but thank you. You know who you are, and thanks. And please come back to our conversations and let us know if there's any particular conversation that you'd like us to host and work with. Thank you.